Good evening, everyone. This is Attorney Amihan April M. Alcazar, your host for the Career Assistance Program here on the Education Channel, airing every Tuesdays from 8 to 9 in the evening.
Greetings, everyone. I think we're ready to get started. Thank you so much for joining us on a day that is cold and snowy here in Denver and across much of our land. Snow is still falling here, but we appreciate you warming up with a discussion this morning. Before we get started, we also humbly want to say we wish everyone a reflective start to Black History Month. And for those of you running mentorship programs or classes that incorporate some innovative lessons or activities on Black History Month, feel free to put those in the chat. We're all here to learn from each other. With that being said, here are a couple ground rules to help us just make the most of this event. Please turn your audio off, turn it on mute, make sure your camera's on. We all want to see each other and see our colleagues. And to help us do that, go to your name and the participants and put in your school so we can see where you're from and network while this is going on. And you can put your video layout in speaker view. That always helps. And here's a picture of me, in case you wanted it. My name is Joe Mickey. I know a lot of you, I work with a lot of you, or have over the years, in my 16 years of working in higher ed and being higher ed adjacent. In those 16 years, before coming to where I'm at now, Mentor Collective, I was always a little frustrated. I didn't know if the research or consulting I was doing was trickling down to students. That's what attracted me to an innovative group of people who were running mentor programs, several of them male of color initiatives or trio initiatives. They all loved what they were doing, but they thought mentorship could do more, reach more students. And that's going to be a lot of what we talk about today. Not that any of the pockets of mentorship that exist across the campus aren't effective and working and shouldn't remain. They should all remain. But how do we reach those students who aren't part of that? And I think we have the perfect people to help us think about that, to help us think about where mentorship lives. And that is because not only are they dressed alike today by accident, they also are from two very different parts of the university, academic and student affairs. But look at what they're doing. They're partnering together to make an amazing program, and they're here with us today. Thank you for donating your time. I'd love to have you introduce yourselves, Janetta and Dr. Dora Lee. Go ahead, Janetta.
Thank you so much. My name is Janetta Dismuke. I serve as the Director of First Year and Transition Experiences in the Office of New Student Programs and Family Engagement. I work directly out of the Division of Student Affairs, and I've been at Cal Poly Pomona since 2000.
Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon to some of you. My name is Dora Lee. I'm the Director for Academic Support and Learning Services. I'm with the Office of Student Success, Equity, and Innovation, and I'm with the Division of Academic Affairs. And I've been at Cal Poly Pomona for 21 years.
That is a lot of years, both individually and combined. Janetta and Dora are both wearing their 15-year Cal Poly pins. All right. And a couple other folks I want to introduce who will not be live, but will be behind the scenes chatting with you. So enter questions, enter ideas in the chat, and they're going to respond. They are also behind the scenes in making this program work. Rory is meeting with Dora and Janetta bi-weekly. She is a member of the Mentor Collective team. She helped scope the program, design it. She triages any concerns. And then Julie is more student facing. So anyone who says, I can't get a hold of my mentor, or I have a mentee with who doesn't have food or has severe anxiety, she's kind of the front lines who gets that to the appropriate people at Cal Poly Pomona so they can intervene. So we want to recognize them, and they'll be chatting any answers to your questions along the way. All right, quick agenda so that we can make the most of this. I'm going to give some background in terms of who we are, Mentor Collective, in case that is helpful, and I will keep that brief. Then we want to jump right into what we all came for, and that is a case study on Cal Poly Pomona. I think the two things that are notable about this program that a lot of you probably want to know about is how do you get a program to 3,000 students participating in a very short amount of time? And where does mentorship live? Is it student affairs, academic affairs, undergraduate affairs, all of the above? These are the two questions I think we'll be touching on throughout. And then you can ask questions in the chat at any time, and we'll leave time at the end to answer anything that isn't answered live. Great. And here's a slide saying that. Submit your questions. All right, so Mentor Collective. We did not wake up one morning and say, let's launch a mentor technology or platform. A lot of those already exist. A lot of those are already on your campus, and they kind of look like networking, kind of like LinkedIn. We thought there needed to be something that is more like the small intentional programs that you run, but also trying to reach those students who maybe don't have the social capital or time for another class or another club. And so that created this think tank that's partially funded by Lumina, Strata. The reason they wanted to invest in our work is they thought we could help move the needle on sense of belonging for first-generation students faster than a university could on their own. And that's part of the story that we'll be hearing from Dora and Janetta today. Along with that, a lot of you have programs on your campus. I think at a typical California State institution, there are 40 to 50 mentor programs just centrally, not even counting the colleges. But a Gallup Strata poll showed us that surveying graduates, about 50% did not have someone to talk to on a regular basis. And at some institutions, that number is higher. So we want to think about those students and how we reach them. And so that should inform our program design and everything we do. Not that the other programs that are smaller or more intentional or grant funded don't serve a purpose. They absolutely do. But we want to think about how do we kind of get people into those programs by casting a wider net. Great. And the other question we'll be touching on, besides how do you scale mentorship to thousands of students, is where should it live? And this is a question that is tough to answer because it really could live within a college of engineering or business or science. It could live in academic affairs, student affairs. It can be closely tied to advising. And also, when is it offered? We're hearing from institutions more and more, they want to reach students earlier in their journey, as early as high school, before they even start to apply. So if that's the goal, is pairing them with a college student that early and then switching them to a different type of relationship. And then when they get to be a junior or senior, having them be a mentor and giving them a new type of mentor like an alum, how do you do that? How do all those work in concert? Who should the mentors be? Who should the mentees be? How should they be matched? That's what we'll be looking at today. That is what Mentor Collective thinks about every day. So those of you who have people on your staff who run mentor programs, or if you are running a mentor program, you are familiar with the maze that's on the screen. There needs to be someone like you who runs a program, who recruits mentors and mentees. This can be a full-time job, getting either faculty, alumni, or juniors and seniors to say, hey, I want to be a mentor, training them so that they have some basic understanding of what they can and can't say, FERPA, Title IX, but not training them to the point where they're an advisor or a faculty member or a RA. That is not the type of training that maybe could scale, because eventually you can't get everyone in the room at the same time. You may run out of money to pay people. So how do you balance that to have effective training but not have it be a barrier? Matching. This is the most difficult thing to do, and we'll talk about how Cal Poly Pomona has approached it. Making sure that the student has some agency to say, hey, I want a first-gen student, or I don't really care about that. I just want someone who's a finance major. How do you make that happen? There needs to be some sort of software to house curriculums so they have things to talk about, but not have the relationship be overly structured. If it seems like another class, people will say, I already have this. It needs to kind of seem like something different, more like social media or something that's fun. Tracking, what are students talking about? How often are they talking? This is usually the million-dollar question in a mentor program. You pair people up, they go off and talk. You're not really sure what they're talking about. So how do you track them? Also, you can do assessment to say, why are we spending money on this in a time where there's so much uncertainty? So all of these are the moving challenges that you're familiar with in running a program. And while that's happening, while your staff is making that happen, there are all these questions that a mentee might say to a mentor, like, I'm having financial challenges. I don't have food. I'm having a family issue, academic issues. I'm not getting sleep. How does that conversation that a mentee has with a mentor that's intimate then make it to the people who can help at a university, like an advisor, mental health services, financial aid? How do you actually link mentorship to all the other resources that you have instead of having it be standalone? And so that's the research we'll be talking about today. We uncovered 6 essentials that should go into any mentor program. That is designing a thoughtful program. So starting with what are we trying to accomplish? If it's sense of belonging, we may not want to use faculty mentors because maybe they don't know what an 18-year-old is going through in the pandemic right now. But if it's academic success, that would make more sense. Recruiting, how do you get people to sign up in this busy time where so much is asked of them? Training, how do you give them effective training and have it be pedagogical based and rigorous, but at the same time, not a barrier to people wanting to do this. And then matching, engagement support, and then assessment. So we'll share some assessment outcomes and how that was collected. So the way we do this is not just a software. We have a whole team who does research. We have a whole team that meets with Dora and Janetta on a regular basis. And then we have technology that infuses it into texting, into a platform so that it can actually scale to 3,000 students. All right. So with that set up, let's get into it. Let's take a poll to help guide our conversation to see how people are thinking about mentorship and what mentorship has looked like on their campus. So historically, what have mentorship efforts look like on your campus? We have siloed, which could mean college by college. It could also mean affinity group. I know at most California state institutions, they have about 20 to 30 affinity-based programs called EOP. Or it could be collaboration between divisions. That's pretty rare, which is why I wanted to bring Dora and Janetta to talk to us today. Or it could be part of advising. It looks like siloed is the winner right now. So we'll talk about that with Dora and Janetta. Do those silos persist? Should they persist? How do you incorporate them? Things like that. All right. Exit my pool. All right, so we're going to get into a case study. Dora and Jeanette are going to walk us through how this came about, why everything just lined for this to happen, and the challenges and experiences they've had along the way. So with that, Janetta, can you give us a little lay of the land at Cal Poly Pomona?
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Cal Poly Pomona is among one of the best public universities in the West, and it is nationally ranked for helping students achieve economic success. Cal Poly Pomona is an inclusive polytechnic university, and so what that means is we cultivate success through experiential learning, discovery, and innovation in all that we do. Essentially, our graduates are ready to succeed from day one. Faculty in all of our disciplines put theory to practice. They provide students with opportunities to apply their knowledge in hands-on projects, research collaborations, as well as valuable internships and service learning opportunities. When Dora and I looked at developing this mentoring program, Bronco Navigators, we looked at the totality of our student population, and we knew that we could not reach all 27,000 plus students. So we focused in on our specific student population. We knew that 58% of our students identified as first generation students, 52% of our students were underrepresented minorities, 11% of our incoming students were new transfer students, whereas 12% were new incoming freshmen. We are an Hispanic serving institution, and so 50% of our student body identifies as Hispanic or Latino, and so we use that data to drive and scale our mentoring program.
Excellent. And Cal Poly, of course, is part of the California State University system, which is made up of 23 separate universities. And one initiative they have been having going on the last 10 years is Graduation Initiative 2025. Dora, can you tell us about that and how Cal Poly has approached it?
Yes. So, as you know, Graduation Initiative 2025 has been kind of in our forefront for quite a few years now. We've been developing many strategies in response to increasing our graduation rates and eliminating the equity gaps that are impacting degree completion. We're taking a holistic and intentional approach in our strategies. As you can see here in the infographic, there are 6 areas we believe can have an impact on a student's ability to completing their degree. We've been working as an institution, strategizing and figuring out how to best serve our students. And so if you look at our next slide, you can see how diverse, and as Janetta mentioned, our campus community is. And so, we've implemented quite a few programs and strategies targeting our different student populations. From mentorship programs became very popular, along with identity specific support programs, and even looking at ways to eliminating administrative barriers, such as putting forms online, changing deadlines. But a lot of these programs were very boutique. When we're looking at serving specific communities, it was really challenging to scale up. And so the conversation has been, how do we scale up these programs to impact a larger student population? And, for those of you that probably have mentorship programs, it's really challenging without a platform to match, to connect, and to track. And so running into Mentor Collective has been a godsend, because it really allowed us to scale up a program and allow it to impact many more of our students. That students that sometimes, may not be part of, a program or initiative. Some of our students can often find themselves sailing through their 4 years, not engaging in a program or a service. And so, providing our Bronco Scholars program to our first year and our transfer students has been a huge change to our institution. And obviously with COVID, that was another huge barrier to our students. And so our campus had to quickly pivot and change our way of being. And so with the conversation with Janetta, we're like, how can we support our students and engage them at a large scale and create a sense of belonging, and really, impact our students at a larger scale. So, we're talking about mentorship here. And when you think about mentorship, like, what do you think about? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And for me, growing up, mentorship wasn't something that was really available to me. It wasn't something that I kind of thought about having. I always thought of it as more of a privilege for people that knew, CEOs at large corporations, and or parents know, someone that could take you under their wing. It was very structured, and even to now, I think mentorship seems sometimes very structured. You get matched with very similar folks in your circle. And so, so I see, our program as being, a conduit to opening up mentorship to more than just those that, would typically receive a mentor in their life. And so being part of Mentor Collective has given us the opportunity to expand this privilege to more than just, the hundreds of students that are part of a small program. So we've been able to scale it up to over 2,000 of our entering students this year. And it's been, wonderful to seeing the numbers increase day by day. We look at the dashboard. It's kind of like our own little social media platform. And it's been a great experience. And I think, the structure has been different because our students are very connected with their technology. And so giving them the opportunity to just text or do a quick email. And it's not that like where you have to like sit down and have coffee together and figure out, okay, how do we do this? So it's really quick. Thus, we call it Bronco Navigators. And it's like, a way for our students to quickly navigate, with their questions, like where is the library? How do you buy books? How do I register for classes? When's add drop? Rather than waiting for that, every half year coffee conversation with your mentor. So that's kind of where we are with our Bronco Navigators program through Mentor Collective.
Yeah. I like the picture you were painting there, Dora. As you were talking, I was envisioning this, traditional mentorship relationship where the mentor has all the answers and the mentee's just grateful to be talking to, this person who has it all figured out. That's not always the case. Sometimes a mentor who's not a straight A student, who's not your typical mentor, who's not an RA, they're not in student government. This might be the very first thing they've ever done to be involved outside the classroom. Sometimes those folks can be the best mentors. They can say, hey, I may not know where I'm headed in life either, but we can support each other. Here are some resources. Here's some things for us to talk about. And relationships where the mentor grows just as much as the mentee, and then the mentee becomes a mentor because they see that they can do this too. Those are some of the best relationships. And I think that's where the traditional version of mentorship that you just described, Dora, may have left some folks behind, where it was only for a few hundred. If we can expand it to everybody and make it more accessible, what can we do? With that comes trade-offs. It's not going to be the same training, the same messaging, the same screening that maybe a mentor program has had, but that doesn't mean that both can't exist, right? And so we'll be talking about how they exist and how one feeds the other. So great. All right. So Dora, as you were talking, I wanted to think about what this looks like. So I've plotted out your program in terms of who we're reaching, at what point, what are we trying to accomplish, and then how did we decide who the mentors are, and then how did we match them? So in the green is your program. I want to start with outcomes, because a lot of times people will start with an outcome like belonging, and then they'll say, okay, we're going to use alumni, and there's maybe not thought or research as to why, but that's just who's available to them. So I want to talk through kind of how you came to who should be the mentors and mentees and how are they matched. So what were the outcomes we were trying to accomplish?
Well, initially, we really wanted to use this for our faculty and staff mentorship with our first-gen students. And so that would have been another small program. But after learning about what Mentor Collective could offer, and in consultation with Joe, we realized that we could actually, reach a larger population and group. And so we pivoted and we're like, you know what, let's offer it to as many first gen, underrepresented, underserved freshmen and transfer students coming into Cal Poly Pomona. This will, provide a opportunity to help them with their transition into the university with the support of a returning student. And so we kind of changed a lot of our objectives and goals after looking at what Mentor Collective could offer us. And so we even talked about alumni and graduate students, but at this point, we've been able to actually recruit quite a few mentors from our returning student pool. They've been so willing to give their time and support. It's just been amazing just to see, how many of our students are willing to volunteer their time to support a new Bronco. And so for us, we are focusing on our undergraduates, our new undergraduates, and we're reaching out to them at the point of them signing up for orientation. So we're trying to get them before they even get to orientation so that they could get also some navigational support. Like, how do I even sign up for orientation? How much is orientation? How do I even pay for orientation? Where is orientation, right? It relieves a lot of that stress and angst, I think. And, there's a lot of administrative rigmarole before you even register for your first class. And so having a Bronco Navigator at this point in time has really been helpful. There's a lot of outcomes that we could focus on. But for us, we really wanted to look at developing a sense of belonging, especially during this time of COVID. And not being able to be present on campus. Some of our students are just not really seeing themselves, as part of our Bronco community. Academic success is definitely something that, is long-term, and we want students to understand where they could access support and services. And so a lot of our students, are talking about, how do I change my major? How do I get tutoring support? I'm struggling with a class. To, long-term retention, because a lot of the experience during the first year is going to impact our decision to stay with us on the long term. And so the relationship is a 1-year commitment for our mentors and mentees, and they have they're welcome to stay as a mentor mentee past that 1 year if they choose to. And so right now we're sticking with peer-to-peer, but doesn't mean that, we will have to stay with that. As we continue to grow and utilize this platform, we may roll into utilizing some of our alumni, staff, and faculty, and of course, industry too.
Yep. Great. Thank you for that insight. Yeah, the gray boxes represent additional paths that the Cal Poly Pomona could take, and then have kind of a tiered approach that creates this culture of mentorship where you, before you even get to campus, before maybe you even put down a deposit or say you're coming, you're given a mentor. Then once you get to campus, maybe a different type of mentor, like we're talking about here. And then maybe you became a sophomore, you become a mentor and need a new type of mentor. And that's the type of handoff we're seeing more and more at universities at scale, which before was kind of logistically a nightmare. And we're seeing it possible now. So this is great. Great. So for those visual learners, I just wanted to lay out all of the things we do. I know there's a question in the chat of how does this sync with CRMs and other technologies that live on campus? We're going to get to that, but I want you to have a picture of what it is. So we do all the recruitment, training, tracking, matching, guiding, and assessment. Cal Poly Pomona is deciding what the program is. From the student's perspective, this is their program. So it's branded as Broncos Navigators. Everything is coming from Broncos Navigators. And then we're kind of the invisible people behind the scenes trying to make it scale, but also trying to capture data like, is a student having food insecurity or academic struggles, and then putting that into the CRM and making sure they get the help they need. Great. So Janetta, would love to turn to you, or this would be a question for either of you. This is kind of the $1 million question I get a lot of: where should mentorship fit on a campus, and how do you think about that?
I think it's a really good question to ask as you're developing a program. Just to give a little bit of insight, our Bronco Navigators mentoring training started probably late May of 2021. And so we are a relatively new mentoring program and a new relationship with Mentor Collective. And so I'll kind of give you some touch points of things that we considered as we were developing the collaborative effort. Dr. Peter Collier has this quote that says, mentoring is a high impact strategy for promoting student success. Everything that we do within our various divisions is around student success at the core. And we have to see mentoring as such within the totality of the campus community. So some of the things that we had to do, we had to reflect on the purpose and the intent of the program first before identifying who it is that we were going to serve. We had to look at the students that traditionally do not have the mentoring relationship and scale the program to that, as we've stated before. Most oftentimes, first generation students have a harder time navigating the educational campus community. And so we felt that it was important to provide those resources and services in this mentoring program to be able to reach out directly to our first generation students, Pell eligible and underrepresented minority. And I also wanted to say that the divisions of academic and student affairs were deeply committed to not only that student success, but the educational experiences of our students. And that is seen in our Bronco Navigators program. And so we look at what engagement looks like. We look at what resources and services do we offer as our divisions, and which ones that do we maybe need to think about a little bit more. And we'll talk a little bit more about what our mentors and mentees need.
All right. So Janetta, you come from the land of academic affairs. Student affairs. Dora, you come from academic affairs. As I scroll through the titles of participants here, we've got faculty, deans, career folks, VPs of student affairs. What advice would you give for divisions that don't typically work together, working together on mentorship?
I think open communication is really important in aligning your goals to the campus strategic plans. So we did a lot of pre-work. We did a lot of conversations and meetings with people from all across campus so that they had a better understanding of what we're trying to do, and also, co-collaborating, and so that it's not only, I always say it's not a Dora party, it's a Cal Poly Pomona party. And so, we took a lot of time having these conversations. This did not come overnight. I think Joe and I have known each other for quite a few years now. And I think, with COVID, that was really the thing that kickstarted this. I guess there is a little silver lining in going virtual. But really it's conversations, being open and honest about what we have, what we don't have, what, each area can contribute. And that's really how I ran into Janetta. I mean, although we worked together in a lot of areas, it was a conversation about how can we support students during this time of COVID? How do you develop belonging from the moment they submit, their intent to register or enroll. And that's where, the conversation flowed, was like, hey, Janetta, what are you doing? And Dora, what are you doing? And so we're like, have you heard of Mentor Collective? That's how it all started.
Yep.
And I think also with that relationship, you really have to have shared visions. With whether or not it's a department or a division, you really have to have that shared vision and that buy-in from administrators. And we've been very lucky in that respect, in that from our university president to our vice presidents to our associate vice presidents, they've really been on board and key when we need the support from the beginning and the onset of getting the funding, pushing the information out to our incoming students and really sharing our vision. It has to be a community and collaborative effort.
Yeah. And Dora, you had mentioned that there are lots of pockets of mentorship that existed and still exist and are still thriving. When you were having those kind of that listening tour of getting everyone involved, what kind of conversations did you have with those folks, and how do you make sure they feel connected to this process and not, left out?
Well, one of the biggest questions we had from our partners on campus that have had existing mentorship programs for years was like, well, isn't this going to stretch, the mentors that are already providing services to our program? Or, how is this going to, how are we going to divide up the students? How are some students going to be, I hear double dipping, they'll be part of this one program and then they'll get invited to join this program and they'll have 2 or 3 or 4 mentors. And so that was a big question, is like, how do we divide up these mentorship programs so we're not overlapping on top of each other? So that was a big conversation we had, and it helped guide how we structured Bronco Navigators. Is that, so at the end of the day, what we said is, we want to reach the students that are not part of a program on campus, those Joes and Joannes, that probably would never get invited to something, the average student, and so we did some filtering. We filtered out students that were already in existing programs, and invited those that were not in a program. I mean, one big one was, we have we have Summer Bridge with EOP, and they do a lot of great mentorship. And so we worked with them, we worked with, Bronco Scholars or Poly Transfers. And these are all like summer transition programs that, have mentorship programs. And so what we did was filter out their students. As for mentors, we casted the net wide and allowed our students to decide how many programs they would like to be a mentor for. So we do have some students that are part of the African American Student Center that are also being mentors for our Bronco Navigators program. We have students from EOP, from Renaissance. And so it's another way for our continuing students to also connect. Because during COVID, our new students aren't the only ones that are disconnected from the actual campus community, but it's also our continuing students. So they're also benefiting from being a mentor. They're connecting with folks and actually contributing to the campus, which gives value to their experience. And so it's kind of a two-way thing with this mentorship program.
Great. And to touch on a couple, to connect that to a couple of questions that are in the chat, even after we filtered out those who were in a TRIO program or a grant-funded program or had a very structured mentor relationship, we still had roughly about, I believe, 8,000, or maybe it was closer to 9,000 students who we invited. We had about a 45% opt-in rate of those mentees who were invited by both text and email saying, yes, I want to do this. They then take a quick matching survey. Mentor goes through training. They're paired together. They're explained why they're paired together. They can then text instantly. We then nudge them and give them things to talk about throughout the year. So that brings up another question that I know is also in the chat, and that's training. What kind of training do mentors get? How can you make sure they are prepared for what's ahead of them, but also don't try to take on too much? We don't want mentors necessarily telling students to add and drop a class if that's not what they're trained to do. At the same time, how do you make sure they know what this role is and the expectations are aligned with what the mentee thinks this role is? So I want to just share the pedagogical taxonomy that goes into our training. It is via Zoom. It is offered to all of these volunteer mentors. We have about 700 trained volunteer mentors in this program for the 2,100 students participating, the mentees, and that's growing. And this training is offered 15 times a week, a live session they can sign up for. So they can pick a time during the night or weekends that works for them. That was very important to Janetta. There are a lot of single parents, people with family priorities, commuters, people working 2 jobs that don't have time for another 2-week class to train how to be a mentor, but they want to give back, and they're very capable of giving back. So in thinking about what needs to go into this, there's role playing, where mentor and mentee, the trainer does a quick role playing with the mentors. There's a breakout activity on active listening. We feel like this is the most important skill that a mentor in this role could have, is just letting them know that you know what they're going through. And you may not have all the answers, but you can point them towards resources and make them feel like they're not alone. And then also just expectation setting of what this is. Janetta, what else was important to you when you thought about the mentor experience?
So our mentors are volunteers, and so they're balancing a lot of different things at the same time that they're giving back to the campus community. And so we had to recognize that students have so many different identities. They're not only students. Some are parents, some are caregivers, some work on campus, some work off campus. Some of them are scholar athletes. And so they have so many identities that they come with, as are so many different students on any given campus community. And so it was important for us to have a mentoring program that could assist us with the training and meet the students at their needs. So being able to log in if I have a free 30-minute block during my day and get some of the training done was very important, because we knew that there were so many other things that a student had to do throughout their day.
Excellent. And to help us visualize that, I wanted to share a page from the dashboard that Dora mentioned. So both Dora and Janetta have access to our dashboard. Anyone at Cal Poly Pomona can have a login, but usually we keep it to those running the program because there's some sensitive information shared in terms of conversations, things like that. But if they pull up their funnel, they can see all the mentees who are invited, those who are registered, those who've taken their matching survey, and now those who are actively participating, what we call matched. Same with the mentor funnel. You can see we cast a wide net. We invited 12,000 juniors and seniors We didn't invite sophomores this year because they didn't feel like sophomores. They felt like freshmen not being on campus last year. Maybe next year we could also invite them. But we invited 12,000 juniors and seniors. We had 1,100 register. And then when you get down to them completing training and actually participating, we have about 500. But we're constantly going back to this pool who have registered and then working them through the pool through customized messaging, saying, hey, you just need to complete your matching survey. Is there any challenge there? We keep the matching survey to 5 minutes. Usually this is a barrier. If people have to fill out an application, which is pretty typical in a mentor program, and it takes them a couple hours, they'll feel like this is just another job or class or something I don't have time for. But if it's 5 minutes and it's quick and it's fun and full of pictures, there's a higher likelihood that's not a barrier. At the same time, that has to capture things that matter. We have to capture things like, do they want another single parent or athlete or veteran as their mentee? And how many mentees do they want to take on? So I know someone asked a question on ratios. I think the typical ratio here is 1-4, 1-5 mentees that a mentor is taking on. We have several that just take on one because that's all they have time for. And they indicate that in their matching survey. So if they just want to take on one, they can. Our research is showing that if a mentor has more than one mentee, they are happier and more satisfied with the experience. And that is because if you only have one and that person's not super responsive, or if you don't hit it off, you may be soured on the experience. But if you have two, you're hedging your bets that you're at least hitting it off with one person and a lot more energized and coming back for year two of being a mentor, as Dora and Janetta were explaining. Great. All right, so let's get into metrics. What do the numbers look like? I know there's several questions in the chat of how are you capturing these numbers and what are they? So we will, again, just really quickly refresh on what were we trying to accomplish in this program so that the numbers are put into context. We want to look at retention, student success. This is the first year of the program. Retention is a lagging indicator. We don't have retention numbers yet, but we will. So maybe we could do it round 2 of this webinar. But we do have engagement numbers. We have a lot of qualitative data from mentors and mentees about why they're doing this. And mentors saying, I'm getting more out of this than my mentee. And it's helped me learn about resources on campus that I didn't know about. So I want to get your reaction to just overall numbers, Dora. What kind of surprised you as we kicked off the program and we started seeing the numbers refresh every day?
Well, the biggest one was the mentorship. We started off with a 800 matches. And we even thought with 800, we may not even reach that goal. In less than a month, we exceeded the 800 matches. And with that, we increased it by another 1,000. And within another month, we exceeded that 1,800. And so recently, we just added another 1,000. So we are close. There's about, I think, 400 in the queue to be matched. So we're probably going to hit our a target again. So that was a huge surprise to us. And we love the insight flags. That has been, a really good tool for us to, understand what our incoming students are experiencing in terms of their needs and challenges. We were actually able to save some of our students from disenrolling because they're experiencing some transitional challenges. And so we reached out, called them to better understand, like, hey, we noticed that, you were considering, leaving Cal Poly Pomona. Is there something that we could better understand in supporting you and offering you some services? And so it really depends how far you want to take it as an institution in terms of how you want to utilize the insight flags. They're just such a rich resource. Joe is mentioning, utilizing this data to help inform our practice, and the insight flags are really, key. It's just so rich with data that we could use it and share with our campus partners, to better strategize on ways that we could support our students. And obviously, the text messaging is a big factor. I mean, look at this, 36,000 text messages are going back and forth in less than a year. I mean, we're looking at, one term. So for us, we see the need just by looking at the numbers.
Yeah. I know one of the questions that we had was, how are you capturing conversations log, and what's the difference between a conversation and a text? So conversations, mentors are trained in their training to log a conversation anytime there's a meaningful interaction. So if you're just sending a text saying, hey, let's meet, that's not a meaningful interaction. But anything where a mentee expresses, goals, challenges, struggles they're going through, a quick conversation is important for the university to know what's going on and to link them to other resources. And so the way the mentor would log that is one of two ways. They can either go into their dashboard, which is web-based. It's easy for them to get into it. They don't have to download anything. They can log what's going on with their mentee, saying, hey, Dora and I talked. She's still having some troubles with time management after the resources I gave her, but she's happy and moving on. And then a text is when mentors and mentees are paired in an anonymized text link, kind of like your Uber driver. You get a text from your mentee saying, hey, you two have been connected. Click here to get started. And you can text them back and forth without having their number. So no one needs to exchange phone numbers to text. They're an anonymized link. There's a fake phone number that comes up that's not their real number. After this program is done at the end of the year, they can continue to text on this anonymized link. Dora and Janetta cannot read those texts for legal reasons and privacy reasons. But the way they know what's going on is mentors are trained to log conversations. Mentees can log a conversation as well. If we see texting going back and forth, our system will say, hey, what are you guys talking about? So that we get people to log conversations. Our research shows that 3 conversations is kind of the magical number where a jump in retention happens. We looked at over 150 programs, and those pairs that have logged at least 3 conversations were much more highly correlated with persistence. So Dora and Janetta can go into the platform, or Rory, who's running their program on our end, and sort by those who have not had 3 conversations and nudge them to say, hey, what's going on? And try to get them to at least have that critical number of interactions. So here's the total number of conversations we've seen, 7,000. Janetta, what have you been hearing from participants?
I think some of the things that we've been hearing are, how to navigate during their first term. We've also heard a lot around just the excitement of being able to have a mentor-mentee relationship and not feeling like they're all alone within our campus community.
Great. Which brings us to flags. So we have conversations, texts, and flags. Dora mentioned the flags. This is only logged by the mentor, and it's about a challenge that the mentee is facing. So in your training, it's very clear that you are not wearing the hat of an advisor, a faculty member, a mental health professional. You are there as a peer who can direct them towards resources and make them feel like they're not alone. And so if someone says, I'm having severe anxiety or thinking about dropping out, I don't know how to register for classes, the mentor can easily flag this. In the times of COVID, everyone just wants to be heard. And sometimes these flags are less actionable than others. And so there's a way to sort out the priority ones to make it easy for Janetta to respond to them. And also, I know there was a question on how this links to your CRM. We are able to do a secure file FTP to a CRM so that these make it in there. So Janetta, Dora, would love to hear from you about a flag that you've seen or how you've used flag data to think about the challenges that students are going through right now.
I think the flags give us an opportunity to kind of triage several different areas and provide direct communication to our mentors. We don't expect our mentors to have all the answers. We provide them with a resource guide of the campus community, but we certainly don't expect for them to know who to contact in every single situation. And so Dora and I go in and, we figure out who is the best staff member or area within the campus community, for that matter, to assist that particular mentor to be able to assist that mentee.
Great.
Talk about partnership. Before we recently hired a temporary person to assist us with our insight flags, but before that, it was Janetta and me. We actually logged onto Teams together and we tackled these insight flags together because we each have our expertise and we all have folks in our area that could help support our students. And one thing that we do here at Cal Poly Pomona is we never let a student alone when they are in need of help. We will always take them, whether it is through a direct email or walking them to a service, because we don't want our students to be running around campus looking for the person they're supposed to talk to. So what we learned is that, when you say, oh, go meet with so-and-so in counseling services, most likely the student may not go over there. But if you provide them with a name and contact, or walk them over, or CC that person, as like, hey, talk to so-and-so, they'll be able to help you. So it's that handoff that's really important to us.
And Dora, I think you may have just answered one of the questions in the chat. Someone wants to know, how many university staff does it take to run this program? So we have you, Janetta, the person you just mentioned, triaging flags. How many hours are each of you spending? Is this a full-time job? What does that look like?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because after I said it's the two of us and an assistant coordinator, it may sound a lot, but realistically, Mentor Collective does all the heavy lifting for us. It's honestly a truly plug and play, and we just need to kind of relax and let it happen. The role that we play is identifying the student populations we want to target and the insight flags, and really monitoring our dashboard just for the sake of reporting. But really day to day, we get notifications from Rory. We love Rory. I mean, we meet with her every other week, and we talk about things that are just on top of our minds, things to triage on our own. But it really doesn't take a lot to offer this mentorship program on your campus.
Great. So it sounds like an hour to a week, maybe in the beginning, and then it goes down from there, maybe an hour every other week. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is a quote from one of your mentors that I just found in the dashboard and wanted to pull, that goes back to this idea that it shouldn't just be a one-way relationship. It shouldn't be mentors giving all the information and not taking. And this is a mentor saying, just helping this student helped me to become better acclimated with what we have on campus. And it made me want to research things that we have on campus. We do want to make that easy for mentors as well. So in the mentor library, where they have about 30 discussion guides on things like managing time, managing failure, being the first in my family to go to school, there are resources that are Cal Poly Pomona specific about where financial aid is, everything they want to know in one stop. And so that is educational for the mentors as well. This leads to a question in the chat that I thought was really helpful for us to explore. Understanding this is a volunteer program and that your mentors have so much else going on, how have you gotten this much interest from mentors? How did you get 700 people to say, yes, I'll do this?
Honestly, I think it blows our mind when we log into the platform and we see there have been days where one day it may be we have 1,500 mentees sign up, and then the next day it jumps to 1,800. I think we've been very surprised with the feedback from our campus community, from our students. But I think it really speaks to the time that we're in, being in the pandemic, and the students really needing and wanting that support. They're not in class to see their classmate and ask, hey, who should I take for such and such class? But they're able to talk to a mentor and have that relationship established early on. And I think that certainly helps their process.
Yeah. And I think, the two things you've touched on, Janetta, are keeping the barrier to entry low. So making sure that they can do this while being a full-time student, a parent, working two jobs, just sending some texts and video chats in between classes has allowed them to be a mentor where maybe a more structured, rigorous class format would not. And then we do want to talk about what the mentor gets out of it. There is a LinkedIn credential they get at the end of the year. We have mentees send a thank you. Dora and Janetta have other plans to thank mentors, especially those who have taken on a larger ratio and caseload. So there's all kinds of creative things we can do to make sure mentors are getting as much as they're giving. All right. You've touched a little bit on this, but Dora, Janetta, anything else you want to share in terms of feedback you're hearing from students? here are a couple. So
I'll start with our mentees, really learning about new resources and services on our campus, advocacy, researching new possibilities and social skills. And with our mentors, they volunteer because they really want their mentees to be successful. And oftentimes the mentors have had maybe experiences where they didn't always feel encouraged, or they didn't feel as though they had someone to keep pushing them and giving them the resources that they needed. Or oftentimes they didn't know where to turn. If they needed tutoring, they needed some academic planning resources. And so they want to give back to their mentees to be able to be able to provide that smoother transition for them.
Excellent. All right. So as we wrap up and move to any questions we haven't answered, Dora, Janetta, what is one thing you want peers to your colleagues here to take away from this year-long experiment that you've embarked on?
And I think, we talked about, how do you make this a true collaboration, and, how does this work with two divisions? And I think what's important is that, it takes a lot of communication, and it's important to break down the silos. Some silos are okay, when we need to do our work, in our areas, but, we just need to keep in mind that we're doing all this for the students. It's not for ourselves, and that, our campus community cannot work together. And unless we set aside our politics, and if we see it as only for myself and, for me to look good, then it'll only hurt the students at the end of the day. So I think this is really putting down the politics and really having true conversations about how do we really want to support students, and also breaking the mold of how things have always been done in higher ed. I think, we're really good at that, right? Traditions. And so thinking outside of the box, be on trend, and utilizing the technology to help you achieve your goals, to not be afraid of using platforms like Mentor Collective.
Excellent. One question just popped in from Susan. Dora, Janetta, do you have a CRM or other technology that you use? Can you talk about that?
Well, CRM stuff is not in my area.
Okay. How about EAB?
Oh, okay. EAB? So yes, we utilize EAB, and we are exploring a way on how to collaborate with EAB on our insight flags, because with EAB, we do have early alerts, and we work with different campus partners to address those early alerts. So we are we're actually working with Northridge, one of our sister campuses, to understand how they were able to set it up in EAB to better respond to these insight flags. Because I'm sure, we will get more and more as we increase our student, mentorship population.
Great. And Susan, there are a number of campuses that use Salesforce and every other technology under the sun, and we have ways to sync data with those. So happy to talk more about that. Wrapping up, someone asked about costs. Happy to have a conversation there, but because we're funded in part by Lumina Foundation, we have the goal of being less than hiring a part-time person to run a program. So this is scalable to all to align with our mission of access and opportunity. Thank you all so much for joining us. We have other events coming up that we would love to have you be part of that I think are a good follow-up to this conversation. So check your email and let us know if you would like to join other upcoming events we have. I really want to thank Dora and Janetta for taking the time and running such a thoughtful, meaningful program for others to learn from. You truly are the epitome of caring about students and putting students first. So thank you. All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful start to their February. Looking forward to talking to everyone again. Here's some of those upcoming events, and stay warm.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Again, it's been the most productive special episode that we've had here on the Career Assistance Program at the Education Channel. So thank you so much for joining us. Our program, the Career Assistance Program, airs Tuesdays from 8 to 9 p.m. where education is going to be seamless to education from the employment to business opportunity. So again, this has been your host, Attorney Amihan April M. Alcazar. So I'm wishing everyone, of course, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm looking forward to having everyone again join us next time here at the Education Channel. So thank you so much for your participation and stay safe and healthy, everyone, and good evening.